Hey y'all, I'm Robbie Wheaton. Today we're going to take a look at the magazine for the Springfield Prodigy DS. There's been a lot of issues that people have had with these magazines, and for those of you that this is your first time using a double stack 1911 that's based on the 2011 platform from STI, you're like, oh my gosh, there's issues with this magazine. It should work right out of the box. Well, a little backstory. These guns have been out since the early 90s. There's always been issues with the magazines. And the reason why is these magazines were originally designed for 45 ACP. So the overall length of the magazine this way, from here to here, is designed for a 1.260 length cartridge. When you start loading a 9mm round in a magazine that's designed for a much larger projectile, a much longer projectile, what happens a lot of times is the round starts to feed and it nosedives into the feed ramp. And you get a nosedive round, lots of other issues that you can run into with them. But I'm going to show you today an easy fix for all of your Prodigy or STI or Staccato magazines. So they work 100% of the time, every time. You've got the reliability that you want and that you need for a carry gun as well as a competition gun. So let's dive into this magazine and I'll show you where the issues are as well as what you have to do to be able to fix your magazine and tune it up to where it works like it's supposed to. Let's get started. All right, so let's talk about how do you fix the Duramag for the Prodigy. And the simple answer is you got to buy some parts. There's some aftermarket parts suppliers that are out there that make excellent internals for these magazines. And we're going to go through and we're going to detail what we replaced in the magazine and why we replaced it. So the first thing we did was completely strip the magazine. We took the base pad and the spacer in the bottom of the base pad off. We took the spring out and we took the follower out. When we took the spring and follower out, the first thing that we noticed was the follower was actually binding and dragging inside the magazine. And the follower dragging can cause a lot of issues. If the follower's dragging, it's not going to allow the rounds to feed up fast enough to feed properly, which can be a contributing factor to rounds nosediving on the feed ramp, or the slide completely missing the round altogether when it goes to chamber the next round. So we pulled the spring out, we pulled the follower out, we chucked those to the side because we're not going to be using those anymore. Now with that being said, the spring that comes with the magazine is an 11 coil spring, which is the exact same spring that we're replacing in the magazine. We're going to put an 11 coil spring in from a company called Graham's Engineering. We picked up the phone, called Graham's and ordered one of their 9/38 spring and follower kits. It's the 11 coil spring and it's the short follower that's designed to work with a spacer. So we got those parts ordered, we got them on the way, and then we picked up the phone and we called Dawson Precision. And from Dawson Precision, we ordered the stainless steel spacer that goes in the magazine. Now I know a lot of you are asking, well, what's a spacer? A spacer it's just that. It is a piece of stainless steel that goes in the back of the magazine and it actually pushes the bullets and the projectiles forward in the magazine. And what that does is it simulates a longer round being loaded in the magazine and it loads the round further toward the tip of the follower instead of back toward the back of the magazine, which helps to facilitate feeding in these magazines that are originally designed for the 45 ACP. So by moving that round forward, you get a much better, much more reliable feeding magazine. Another benefit of using the followers from Graham's Engineering are they're a lot thinner. So the thinner follower is going to allow you to have more capacity in your magazine. Once we got the spacers and then we got some base pads, +1 base pads from Dawson Precision. They're easy off base pads. They're made out of aluminum, they're anodized, they've got a little lever on the side. You just slide it to one side and pop the follower pop the base pad right off the magazine. Click it back on, slide the little arm back over, and it locks the base pad on your magazine. Super easy to take apart, clean your magazines, service your magazines. I've used them for over 20 years. They are outstanding base pads. Once we installed those base pads, the spacers and the follower and spring in the magazine, we went from a unreliable 20+1 capacity to a 100% reliable 23+1 capacity in the same magazine. And we ran several hundred rounds of a mixed bag of ammunition in these magazines. 115 grain, 124 grain, 125 grain, 147 grain, even up to some 160 grain lead projectiles with varying overall lengths from 1.060 to 1.165. Full metal jacket, hollow points, giant hollow points that look almost like a flying ashtray. I mean, these things don't feed in any gun, and they'll jam in almost everything that you put them in. Threw them in there, and I mean, we mixed everything up. Full metal jackets, it was just a mixed bag shoved in the magazine, and we're like, let's see if it'll run it. Rack the slide. First thing that we noticed was with a 23+1 or 23 rounds in the magazine, when we racked the slide, even with the stock 8-pound spring that comes with the pistol, it chambered the round, no problem at all, just racking the slide. So took the magazine out, ejected the round, put the round back in the magazine, locked the slide to the rear, put the magazine in, and dropped the slide from slide lock. And once again, it fed and chambered the round with no problem whatsoever, which has been one of the big issues with the stock magazine and stock follower, is the round wouldn't chamber. The first round wouldn't chamber out of the magazine. The slide would stop short, it would nosedive on the feed ramp, you'd have all kind of issues. The spacer that we put in there and the different follower and spring from Graham's Engineering took care of all of that. Every bit of those issues went away. So we loaded the mixed bag in it, we ran through the mixed bag of ammunition, and then we shot just a ton of different stuff through it. Like I said, several hundred rounds, over 300, not quite 400, and it fed everything. Feeding was 100%, extraction and ejection was 100%, and it's all mixed head stamp stuff too. Some of it was reload, some of it was commercial ammunition. We just wanted to see what the gun would run. And once we did the follower upgrade in the magazine and put the spacer in, it literally ran everything. Guys, I'm telling you, these magazines right here are not junk, okay? Everything that you're seeing online, oh, the magazines are junk, Duramax makes junk mags, it's not true. Not true at all. The issue is with the spring and the follower in a magazine that's designed for 45 ACP. Once you dump the spring and follower that's in the magazine and replace it with a good spring and follower and the spacer, reliability with these magazines is 100%. We added the base pad on the bottom because I love these base pads. They're on all my 2011s, and this one's going to be no exception. It's going to be running these base pads on all of the magazines as well because they're so easy to take off and service the magazine in between. If I'm at the range shooting, I drop it in the dirt, it gets filled up with sand or whatever. It's super easy for me to take this mag, slide the little arm to the side, pull the base pad off, spring comes out, spacer comes out. Now I'm ready to clean my magazine with a mag brush. Now, one of the big things with these spacers to take note of is there's two different spacers that are available. There's a stainless steel spacer that's made for a 140 millimeter magazine, and a 140 millimeter magazine is the longer magazine that comes with the Prodigy. It also comes with a shorter 126 millimeter magazine as well. But when you're ordering your spacer, make sure you get the correct spacer for the correct magazine. 126 millimeter spacer for the 126 millimeter magazine, and 140 millimeter spacer for the 140 millimeter magazine. They also make a 170 millimeter magazine and a 170 millimeter spacer, and that's available from several other companies other than Duramax. I don't think Duramax is offering 170 millimeter at this time. But once you pull your magazine apart, you get your spacer, your 140 or 126 millimeter spacer. One of the big things that you want to do is at the top of the spacer, cut a 45-degree angle on the top of the spacer. And the reason for this is it allows the spacer to slide all the way up in the magazine to the feed lips. If you don't cut that angle, it won't slide all the way up to the top of the magazine, and you'll end up having to trim the bottom of the spacer to get it to fit in the magazine. So 45 degree those top edges so it'll slide all the way in, and then it'll work just like it's supposed to. Now, there's also plastic spacers available for these magazines. The price point is about the same. It's about $7 or $8 for the stainless steel one. It might be $6 or $7 for the plastic one. Me personally, I prefer the stainless steel ones for a couple of reasons. One, the stainless steel lasts forever, where the plastic can wear and get some chips and grooves and just deteriorate over time from a lot of shooting. But the stainless steel one, it will last forever, and it also adds weight to the magazine. So when you're doing a fast magazine change at a competition or at the range shooting or in a defensive situation, that added weight from the spacer as well as the base pad will help that empty mag get out of the gun a lot quicker. So I'm a big proponent of the stainless spacers and the aluminum base pads just for the added weight to the magazine so it drops out of the pistol faster even when it's empty and unloaded. One of the nice things about the base pads from Dawson Precision are the base pads are actually the same height as the OEM plastic base pads that come on these magazines. So when you put the aluminum base pad on, it doesn't add any extra length compared to the stock plastic one, but because you're able to use a thinner material with the aluminum, you actually are able to gain one extra round with the base pad that you wouldn't be able to get with the plastic base pad. One thing to be aware of with the followers, and these are with the OEM followers or with any aftermarket follower in the Prodigy or any other 2011, is you may have to Dremel or file the notch on the follower that engages the slide stop to lock the slide back on the last round. I don't like my slides to lock back, so I cut the notch completely off of mine so it won't lock the slide back on the last round. I left them pretty much stock on the new followers from Graham's Engineering just to see how they'd work in the gun. They would actually lock the slide back with one round left in the magazine. So I had to cut the follower just a little bit where it engages the slide stop so it wouldn't lock the slide back on the last round with one round left in the magazine, but it would lock the slide back once the magazine was empty. So that's one thing to be aware of. You may have to do a little bit of fitting on the follower itself, and that's going to be with the OEM follower or with any of the aftermarket followers that you may have to tune those to your specific gun. Not a big deal. You can do it with a Dremel or with a file or whatever, and it just takes a couple of minutes. Remember, it is plastic, so if you're using a Dremel with a sanding drum or whatever, be light and easy with it. Just gentle touches and test fit a lot until you figure out how much material that you have to remove. Another thing to note with the Springfield Prodigy is it works with a lot of other magazines. The Duramag works in it, the magazines from STI work in it, the magazines from Staccato work in it, the magazines from MBX, SVI, Infinity. We've got all of those magazines on hand, and every one of those magazines from those companies that we tested in the Staccato worked great. So if you don't want to use the Duramag, you're like, oh, it's voodoo, whatever. There's other stuff that's out there that's available that works great in the Prodigy. So don't be afraid to try some different magazines. If you want to use something a little different, whether it's stainless steel mag or black nitrided mags similar to what come with the pistol, there are some other magazines out there that do work and do work well in the pistol. I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a little something. The Prodigy is a great pistol. There's some little things that you need to do to make some improvements to it, especially with the magazines like we detailed in this video. And use the companies that I recommended, guys. They're great companies. They've been around for a long time. They're great people that work there. Great owners of the company. They've been involved in the shooting sports for decades and really support our industry. So check them out. Check out their products that they have. Great companies. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. Share it with all your friends. See you guys next time.